Mabuhay, Kamusika, welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. I apologize for being about 20 minutes late. I overslept, got home from work, wasn't feeling so good. I set the alarm, but I must not have set it right because I looked at the clock for some reason. It was already time to start this. So let's get started. Um, the topic here for this live stream is how to communicate to your Filipino wife or how to communicate with your Filipino wife. Communication is so important and it can make or break any relationship. And with the Filipina, it's quite possible you have not spent a whole lot of time together. And when you are together, of course, you want to make sure that the words you say are the right kind of words because we do remember and take to heart the words that we hear very seriously. So, without further ado, let's start with this topic. Um, how we communicate with one another at work, at home, anywhere can determine if any kind of relationship will be successful. The words we choose, the way we deliver them, the tone of voice, how often we repeat them, can build up and nourish a relationship, or it can destroy it or any potential it had. In this video, I'll try to not talk about gossip, slander, speaking nonsense, or babbling, proud or arrogant speech, and even lying, but instead we'll focus on other aspects of communication that affect a husband and wife, in this case, a foreigner and a Filipina wife. And just one thing about not lying is that when you first start talking online with a Filipina, even though you want to make a good first impression, it is very important to not be untruthful. You don't want her to form a certain opinion about you from what she saw or heard you say, only for her to find out eventually that you're not the person that she thought she married or is being involved with. James 3 2 through 8. I won't read all of this, but it talks about um, the difficulty of the tongue. We'll call this the tongue, our language, the words that come out of our mouth, the way we communicate. It says, verse 2, we all stumble in many ways. Anyone who has never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. Now, this would literally only refer to Jesus Christ, who was perfect, who never said a sinful word, and he never sinned. If we could learn to keep our tongues in check, the words that we say, the emotions behind them, then we would be able to exercise self-control anywhere with our body. Talks about ships, although they're so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. And likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. So again, what we say can destroy, can burn down our relationship, and we might not be able to overcome it. So we want to talk about, and we'll go over some practical examples of some good things to say to your Filipino. 2 Corinthians 8:7 says, but as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, it is unmistakable that learning the ability to excel in our speech, in our relationships, is the kind that I talk about in this channel. For foreigners and Filipinas, it's absolutely essential to having a pleasing and lasting relationship. Is how we talk to one another. If you see my videos, you can tell how I use speech to help my marriage. This is so important. I want to do a lengthy live stream and take a greater look at words and how we should use them for a successful marriage. Now, I did have to end this at some point so I can move the car out of the driveway so my wife can get home. So I actually have 15 minutes less because I am still trying to wake up. So hopefully I will make some sense here. Now, these Bible verses are just going to guide the the process here, the video, and they apply whether you are a believer or not, because they're just general wisdom that is true for anyone in the world. Psalm 19:14 says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." The Bible has so much to say about acceptable speech that this is where we need to look. Luke 6:45 says, "A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." And this is a chilling commentary. Ultimately, our speech, like any behavior, is about the heart. This is all of us, and only God can soften our hearts. 1 Peter 3:10, I love this one. "For whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it." And one could easily substitute for whoever desires to have a good marriage, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. There's so much good there in that verse. I believe the husband should take the lead in pursuing peace in his Filipina relationships when things break down, as they inevitably will. Saying "I'm sorry," of course, is always important. Not expecting her to be perfect helps too. And there are times in my marriage when I've realized, that I need to seek peace, whether it was what I said that caused my wife to be upset, or maybe it's more her fault. Here it's saying seek peace, pursue it. So it's an active seeking for peace, and turning away from evil and doing good, and that would include the deceitful speech, words that put down, and so on. Proverbs 18:21 warns us the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Cannot forget this one when you get married. The tongue has the power of life and death. It's up to us which one we choose to use it for. We have probably all been in arguments or heard couples argue and fight. In fact, I've called the police twice in my life because I heard other couples arguing and it got so bad. It's one thing to have a heated and necessary discussion about something urgent or exceedingly critical when there's a disagreement, but it's another thing to use threatening, harsh, demeaning language. That kind of communication erodes the relationship, and it kills slowly. It may be easier for a person to remember hurtful words than helpful words, like when they were called names or engaged in an argument that got personal, where things were said that should not have been said, that someone may not even have believed, but just wanted to wound the other person. That can sting for a long time and may never be forgotten, even when pleasant words are spoken afterwards in an attempt to make up for that. Pleasant, helpful words need to be used regularly. In my opinion, it might take 50 good words to overcome a hurtful word that you've said to your spouse. Well, I tell you what, I had my blood pressure yesterday was in the 160s, and I think it's because of this fertility medication we're on. I woke up from my nap. I thought the TV was on because I could hear this buzzing, and the buzzing is in my head. It's just, I feel very uncomfortable with that, but I know that doing something to lower your blood pressure is not generally good for fertility. We're starting to see some results, so I just don't want to short circuit that right now, but I definitely do not like the way this feels. Saying or hearing, "I hate you," I don't love you. You're no good. You're stupid. Will you ever learn? Or maybe our marriage was a mistake. Or so and so's wife is better at, always injures. And the more they are repeated, the deeper the wound. Even if words or statements aren't necessarily corrosive, the volume or manner they are expressed can cause harm. Instead, how about these comments? I love you. I love you no matter what. I need you. You are so good to me. I am glad I married you. I forgive you. I am sorry. I am fulfilled. I am satisfied with you. You make my life complete. Or I'm so glad God brought us together. That's not to even mention words of thanksgiving for every little thing that you can think of your wife doing that you appreciate. And I hope my wife thinks every time I see her that I will have something good to say, because she's so used to hearing good things come from me. I guess this would apply even if we're texting messages. I make it a habit to message my wife at lunch pretty much every day to tell her I enjoyed the food, or I'm thankful for the specific things that she packed for me to eat, even if it's something she didn't cook, but at least she purchased it and put it all together. I'm sure she likes to hear that too. Another habit is telling her I love her before I even get out of bed in the morning. I try to say it before going to bed, but one time, a few weeks back, I was tired and wanted to go to sleep, and my wife, who gets up later than I do, was looking at her phone, looking on the internet, and she said softly, after I was trying to fall asleep, I heard her say, "You didn't tell me you love me," in a tone that suggested she was asking why. She is used to me saying, "I love you," and that's the way I want it. I've told my wife, thank you for, her lovemaking, for the way she decorates our house to make it a home, or for vacuuming the carpet, when she decides to cut the grass. I've learned how to be comfortable praising her or complimenting her. And that's something that, most of us, it probably doesn't come natural. At least it didn't for me. At first, it's probably easier to complain, to point out what is wrong, but praising is much more edifying and encouraging. How about, honey, I didn't hear from you tonight that you were going to be late, and I was very worried about you. That is better than, where have you been? Why didn't you say something? You weren't thinking about me. This is similar to a conflict we had recently in the Philippines on vacation, and I was a lot more emotional than I should have been. Probably should have counted to 10 or just whatever, trusted her, that she would know or think that I wasn't concerned about her, that I trusted her. But anyway, I lashed into her harsher than I should have, unnecessarily. And like I said, I could have said something like, I didn't hear from you tonight, that you're going to be late, and I was very worried about you, and left it at that. But the words I chose were not the best. Maybe it's because I'm a lot older than she is, or that all around us, people die before their time. But part of me tells me I never know when the last time will be that I'm going to be able to say something kind to her, or when that'll be the last time, she ever hears it from me. I do the best I can to be consistent so that my wife comes to expect that I will appreciate her always. For all I know, she grew up barely hearing these words that build her up and validate her worth. I want to make sure she hears that from me. And also be sure to tell you that Love Beyond the Sea is brought to you by this. It's called XO Classic Candies, and they taste like chocolate. My wife says she got it at the Asian store. I'm about out, and they really do taste like coffee. They're really good. So, excuse me for talking and eating. Make that Colossians 4, verse 6 tells us, let your speech be always with grace. This is a good one. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. And that's kind of like what I'm talking about in this video on communicating with your Filipina wife. Our speech in any situation should be with graciousness. This kind of healthy speech might require some premeditation on how to approach a situation before we open our mouth. But it seems to be saying here that this should be an expectation for the rest of our lives. It will take practice. We'll have to get used to that. And our lives, our relationships will certainly be better for that. This does not mean that we lie or deceive our spouse in order to make them feel good or to avoid a conflict that we know is going to come up again. A man should not shy away from discussing things with his wife that they really need to talk about. It may require lying awake at night thinking about how to express what he needs to say about a big decision that needs to be made, or to make a remark about hurtful words that he received from his wife. There are times we need to pray for wisdom before we respond with our words. We don't have to respond or answer right away, especially in the heat of the moment when it's usually not good to respond. And here's another one I've never forgot all my life. Doesn't mean I always do it, but I should. Proverbs 15, 1 and 2. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Something to know if you're having a conflict. A gentle answer or soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise adorns knowledge, it continues, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. There will be many opportunities for conflict and anger in a marriage. Sometimes, when all is going well, you wonder if an argument is around the corner because you haven't had one for a while. This is a great verse to apply to marriage. The Bible says to be angry and sin not. We're going to get angry at times because we are human, after all. And I think anger is a normal emotion and not sinful in and of itself. What matters is how we respond to our anger. Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers and chased them out with a whip, but he didn't sin. He was zealous. We would do well to always be ready to tell ourselves that a soft or gentle answer turns away wrath. It is so easy when we start to lose control to just explode in rage. Think how much better it would be if we would stay calm and recognize that being emotional can only make things worse and sometimes irreparable. Now, one of the things Filipinas tend to think about foreigners is we're kind of loud. We confront a lot. They don't like our language. Another way, when we get upset, they don't like the way we act. So they might be a little bit more sensitive to that than, let's say, an American woman. Nevertheless, it's important to learn that the things we say can make or break a marriage. Can you think of a time you let someone have it, how that worked out, how you felt afterwards? I've done that a few times. God knows and expects that we will get angry, but this way, his way of dealing with it would not include sin. A while back, I yelled at my wife on the phone while I was driving home. And this time I was furious, not necessarily because of something she did, but the way she responded to what I said wasn't the way I expected her to. And when I got home, it picked up from there. And soon my wife was getting angry. I was so consumed with the thought that I had been wronged that I didn't think what the consequences might be. If there had been a jet plane taking off near me when I was driving home that day, you wouldn't have been able to hear the plane for the tone of voice I had. Man, I was really frustrated. Looking back at it now, I wonder how it might have turned out had I instead calmed down, prayed in the car, cooled off, then came home and gently hugged my wife or put my hands on her shoulders and gently told her that I really needed to talk to her about this situation. Instead, my harsh words stirred up her anger. I mean, I've done plenty of wrong. And like I said, these verses apply to all of us. Psalm 141, verse 3. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. We need to be vigilant to situations that can cause us to erupt in anger or respond with profanity or put downs. We've been there many times before, so we shouldn't be good at knowing which situations will require us to reply with a gentle response or to just, how about this, walk away. Novel idea, that we don't have to say anything sometimes. The prophet Isaiah lamented that he was a man of unclean lips. Isaiah struggled with profanity. Peter was cursing and swearing when he denied knowing Jesus in Matthew 26, verse 74. It is amazing to me that with all that Jesus had to put up with, that he never sinned with his words or even his thoughts, for that matter. Maybe there's something there. You don't sin with your thoughts, you're not likely to sin with your words, but he never did. Your Filipina is going to hear new swear words in your country, probably, than she has heard before. Just don't let her hear them or learn them from you. Proverbs 17, 27, 28. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even tempered. And yet again, another verse to apply to marriage, using words with restraint. And if you have understanding, you are even tempered. It says, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. There are times it just feels so good to unload on someone or to burst out in anger at yourself, or just for bad, dumb luck. I tell you what, I know that when I talk to a customer service representative, pretty much about anything, any of them, I will be tempted to lose my temper. I know that going into it. I have to tell myself that they only know what they've been trained to know, and often simply are unable to help with what I want them to do for me. My wife takes it personally when she hears me get angry with someone else on the phone, for example. One time with customer service, the person I got upset with was a Filipina. Naturally, my wife didn't like that. Think how much healthier we would be if we would learn to use restraint and be even tempered. The Bible says this is a person who has knowledge. Wisdom is the proper use of knowledge. So a wise man or woman will use restraint with their speech. There's a quote, something like, it's better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. I remember telling a friend once that I thought people that just didn't say anything or weren't, emotional, were being weak or something to that effect. But I was wrong. It takes more strength to remain calm, than to just blow up. Considering you may have a relationship with a Filipina, someone from far away, different culture, maybe large age gap, there's an increased likelihood of misunderstanding or just not understanding. Sometimes I need to repeat myself to my wife because I don't know if she just isn't paying attention or she misunderstood, but I tend to get upset with her when I have to repeat myself. And there are times I must tell myself that Isa and I come from much different parts of the world. And we got married in less than 8 weeks. So we got a lot to learn about each other. And we both understand now kind of the buttons we shouldn't push, because we'll make each other upset. And I'm just hopeful that you can think about all these verses. If you listen to it again, you can pick these verses up because they're going to help you at work. They're going to help you in your relationship. You can kill off a relationship early, losing control, being upset, not being even tempered, and saying things you regret. Like Proverbs 10:11 says, our words should be a fountain of life. Not only do we want to avoid saying negative things, hurtful things, but they should be edifying. Which you think is more difficult, to remain calm when you want to explode in anger with indecent words, or to use language that will build someone up? The truth is, a lot of us find it difficult to say positive, uplifting things to people, to be complimentary or to praise them for good things that they have done. I don't know why that is. I used to be like that. One day at work, many years ago, I remember giving someone a compliment and being a little uneasy about it, but ever since, it has become easier, especially since getting married, because I want to look for things to compliment my wife on, and the more I do it, the more comfortable I get, and you will too. I have a video called How to Praise Your Wife, which goes through Proverbs 31, helps point out areas that a husband could use to praise his wife. Now, I haven't released it yet, so maybe I should do that next week. In Song of Solomon, for example, there's a lot of praise for a woman from the man. Proverbs 12:25, anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. Glad is good, but a good word can also build up, encourage, inspire, and more. This illustrates the importance of thinking about the outcome we want our words to have and shaping them to that outcome. If we want our Filipino wife to feel good about herself, we use words of praise. If we want her to feel confident, then we remind her of her successes. If we want her to be a good lover, then we will tell her how we appreciate her intimacy. Now, my wife this weekend is going to a church conference, women's conference. I've always wanted her to do that, and she doesn't have overtime this week, and so she's going to do that, and I'm really thrilled, And since I found out she's going, I've tried to tell her how proud I am of her for going, how happy I am for her going, and whenever your wife does something that you appreciate, saying to her and repeating it, hon, I really am glad you did this. It makes me happy that you did this. However you say it, it doesn't have to be really elaborate. Just let her know that you're grateful for something, and she is likely to want to repeat that behavior. Isaiah 50, verse 4, the Lord God has given me the tongue of those who are taught, that I may know how to sustain with the word him who is weary. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of things a husband can say to his wife that would be encouraging, uplifting, and inspiring. For example, you could say things to her like, I recognize the hard work you do. I'm satisfied with you. You fulfill me. You are a good lover. I need you. You are a special woman. Is there anything I can do for you? Do you need help with something? I just want to be together with you. Thank you for, blank. Thank you for this or that. I thank God for you. You can do it. You are good at something. I love you. How was your day? How do you feel about something? I like it when you do this. Things are going to get better. Or I will pray for you. You're so thoughtful. You are bright. What do you think of this, hon? You complete me. I don't want to live without you. Things like that. Nothing wrong with saying those things, and a woman wants to hear that, no matter what nationality she is. Proverbs 10:31, the mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom. Once again, what we say should be wise and helpful. Proverbs 16:23, the heart of the wise makes his speech judicious and adds persuasiveness to his lips. This is why it is hazardous to just react with the first thought that comes to your mind when you get angry. I like to mention here persuasiveness, not make demands or gives orders. Yes, the husband is the head of the wife. I've said that many times and will continue to, because the Bible puts it that way. But a man's wife is not his child or his employee. Sometimes a man will need to state the reasons for wanting his Filipino wife to do something, not just tell her that it needs to be done. For example, he could say something like, "Honey, I really look forward to at work to eat lunch when you make something, or your something is fantastic. Would you please make it for me tomorrow? I appreciate your cooking, honey. I'd really like it if we could do something together. What do you think? You really look fantastic wearing that. Do you mind wearing it again? Sweetheart, tell me which of these options you think is best. You know, my love, I apologize again for the other night. I love you too much to want to have that happen again." Proverbs 12, you're going to have to use your words to heal up and patch up things you say, because we all say things we shouldn't say. And so you have to learn to be humble and say, "I'm sorry, I blew it again. I'm sorry, I need your forgiveness," and so on. And you're just going to have to. Proverbs 12:18 and 19. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Reckless or thoughtless words cause wounds to a relationship, but our words can also be used to heal and restore when that is needed. I hope you can see why it is so important not to respond quickly to a volatile situation. Sometimes it's best not to say anything, at least not for a while. Proverbs 15:4. The soothing or gentle tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. And I don't want to see you do that with your Filipina. Some of them are very sensitive. They're not used to hearing the things we say or the way we deliver it. And especially starting out, it's important that you get off to the best start you can, and you make the best first impression you can. Sometimes saying nothing at all is wise, better than saying something hurtful. I suspect many foreigner or Filipino relationships have not worked out because the husband was not careful with his words to her. He didn't build up his wife. She didn't feel appreciated, or worse, she felt demeaned, unimportant. Just recently, my wife made the statement to me that people remember the bad done to them far more than they remember the good. The context was in a friendship. Words that cut and wound certainly tend to linger. And I haven't been ignoring you, Phil, to Phoenix. I appreciate you being here, listening to this talk about communication. I'm sorry if you're late. I overslept. I set the clock and it didn't turn on. I feel like I don't know. I've had some really high blood pressure, and it felt good to lay down, and my head is still ringing. But fortunately, I woke up in time to be only 15 minutes late. So anytime you want to drop in a comment, Phil's to Phoenix. I know you're married. Can't remember how long you've been married. I'm sure you can relate to the things I'm saying. A guy can have all the money in the world. Filipina is not going to just stay with a guy. She might marry him because he can provide for her, but she's certainly not going to stay with him if his words are going to beat her down. He doesn't have to physically harm her, but his words can be very destructive. When someone's spirit is crushed, they're finished. That relationship is over. This can be the result of the wrong choice of words spoken without thinking first. How do we respond when someone is saying things to us that make us feel small and insignificant or stupid? It's not very motivating when we hear that. 3 years for us too. About 4 months apart, actually, Phil's to Phoenix. We got married May 10th, 2015, and then my wife was here just 8 months later, January of 2016. Proverbs 10:19. Sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. See how important it is to know how to be silent, when to be silent. I should add here that holding their tongues does not imply being timid or afraid to speak up. That could end up with an explosion of emotions from holding things inside. We want to get things out, but we don't want to do so in a way that harms. Failing to say something to try to make up for peace isn't helpful. I know that when I swear around my wife, yes, there are times I swear around my wife, it bothers both of us. I don't swear at her, but I have sworn when I was angry, and life is better when I do not. Ecclesiastes 10:24. A fool multiplies words. I have often been in situations where I kept rambling and things only got worse, and I just felt worse. If we can just bite our tongue longer and listen more, we would probably respond with different words. I wonder what a day or two would look like for a couple if they both decided that they would not speak to each other for a period of time, let's say a whole weekend or something. I don't mean double tempo where you're both not talking. Single tempo is bad enough. Excuse me. Rather, they decide to communicate to each other only using non-verbal means. It could be, and this is actually a good thing to think about doing at any time. How you communicate non-verbally. It could be touching, caressing, nodding your head, kissing, holding hands, smiling, looking each other in the eyes, putting your arms around, her shoulder, and just no words. I think an experiment with something like this would probably be a good thing. Proverbs 15:28. The heart of the righteous weighs or ponders its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. Not just count to 10, but think about what you're going to say and how that works for the good of your relationship. If you know your Filipina is going to ask for money for her family, if you really feel strongly about not doing it this time, you would do well to ponder the most persuasive way to state your case. Now, looking at the camera, I just remembered something. Not that I'm uncomfortable, but I was thinking one time I'm too low in the chair. I can't move the camera much, so I got this nice a big pillow. Um, I don't think saying for the 10th time no, um, as far as the most persuasive way to get your point across. Maybe you aren't giving persuasive reasons. It might be better to prioritize certain things that require money and why. Even saying we can't afford it might not be complete enough. Perhaps it's better to say why the money is needed more in other ways. Frankly, money issues pose a higher risk of disagreement and tension, so it will require patience in attempting to try to be on the same page with each other on the dynamics of this situation. 8 months to a year before we learn to argue. Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Your wife gave you the silent treatment. They call that tampo, and it's a Philippine word. Anytime you argue, um, that some women do it longer than others. So you're saying that it took about 8 months before you kind of learned how to disagree with each other, how to disagree without being disagreeable, and so on and so forth. That's what I'm trying to do here with this. Just throw out all these verses, different ways to say things, um, because you're going to rub each other the wrong way. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 7, talking about the troubles of the flesh, Paul said his preference would be to not marry. I don't want to get into that whole verse because it's extremely misunderstood. His preference was that you do what you were called to do. If you don't need marriage, you stay single. And if you do marry, you need to marry, but there's the troubles in the flesh, and that is the sinful humanity of the man being intimate with the sinfulness of the woman. And that's going to cause a lot of tension. So I'm hoping that through this, you will learn to, when you say things, that they would be more persuasive and beneficial to your Filipina. Um, and whether this is a disagreement about money or anything, it's better to calmly look in her eyes, place your hands on her shoulders, and tell her in a calm, soft voice that you simply do not agree with her on a particular issue and you just can't allow it. If it's something like that, this would be after giving a careful thought and being able to understand exactly why she feels the way she does and express what she is saying in your own words so she knows you're paying attention. If you're really listening, you'll be able to repeat back to her what she's saying in your own words. Then you know you're getting it. Get some more coffee. Actually, it's tea. Proverbs 21:23. Those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. There you go again. No doubt this applies to marriage. Some men simply are more verbal, more talkative than others. My wife thinks I talk a lot, but I tell her there's other guys that talk a lot more than I do. If you're feeling like you're going to say something you regret, calmly tell your Filipina that you think it would be a good idea if you gave yourself some time to think it over first. Something to add to the idea of effectiveness of our words would be this: that our actions support our love for our wife. They back up our words. Saying all the right things without being backed up by corresponding action isn't going to be effective. There is the saying that people don't care what you know or say until they know how much you care. When our actions are for the good of our wife, I think it gives the words more weight, more validity. Proverbs 18:2. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinion. Um, Verse 6. The lips of fools bring them strife, and their mouths invite a beating. The mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives. This is an emphatic call to watch what you say. If nothing else, learn to acquire the opinions of your Filipino wife and then try to understand what she means. Ask clarifying questions. I wonder how many marriages turned sour the moment some destructive words were used without thinking it would wound greatly. Some women are more sensitive than others too. So with some wives, their husbands will need to use a little extra restraint. And just because your wife might not say anything to you or bring it up, that does not mean that she's been wounded. Certainly, tempo is one indication that you've said something wrong. Um, but sometimes a woman might not be that overt and make her point. And you could just be adding insult to injury if you think everything's all right, and it's not. She did a lot to help me learn to calm down and grow my patience. She learned to open up and communicate even if I was confrontational. We both learned that you can argue without being mean. Thank you, Phils, for Phoenix. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Um, I don't know, you probably, like most foreigners and Filipinas, didn't know each other a long time. Maybe you did spend extensive time in the Philippines. We got married quickly. I flew out there for a month to marry her, come back, and then 8 months later, we were together. And then we really started learning what we were like. But that's so good to hear that your wife helped you learn to also calm down and be patient, and that she learned to open up and communicate, even if you felt like you had to be confrontational about something. Proverbs 12:13 and 14. Evildoers are trapped by their sinful talk, and so the innocent escape trouble. From the fruit of their lips, people are filled with good things. More on the positive effect of wise speech. Filipinos are not used to rude people being loud or using profanity. One of the biggest keys for having a good marriage to a Filipina is how you speak to her. John 6:68 says the Bible has the words of eternal life. The best example in the world on helpful, necessary words that impact the whole world in a good way. Read the Gospel of John in the New Testament, and you will hear words that reveal how to have eternal life. It doesn't get any better than that. James 1:19. Never forget this one. James 1:19. You know it's true. It talks about being quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath or anger. This is short, so it's easy to remember. And the one I have repeated many times to myself. And it's excellent when you're in some kind of argument or disagreement with your wife. Right away, allow time to hear and listen to her or anyone you're arguing with. Don't be in a hurry to say something, because if you're in a hurry to say something, you're going to miss some valuable information that they're saying to you. And even if you're angry, focusing on listening first and not being in a big hurry to talk, that will help calm your anger instead of seething. Well, I can't wait till she gets done talking so I can let her have it. It buys you some time to calm down. If you listen to her or ask her, can you say that again? Or, I'm not sure I understand. That maybe is better than counting to 10, because you're actually going to learn more by being quiet for a while and letting her explain herself some more. Often, what we do is we respond in the reverse order. We start by fuming, then losing control. We open our mouths and speak all our mind and exclude the part of being quick to hear. Wouldn't it be more profitable when we sense we're getting upset to ask our wife to please explain again her position so you can repeat it to her using your own words? Just this activity can slow down our pulse and distract us from responding with hurtful words. Ephesians 4:29, in fact, says, do not let any unwholesome talk come from your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that may benefit those who listen. And this is one of the reasons I'm so complimentary to my wife, is because she's my wife. The Bible talks about you being one flesh. It serves no purpose to put down my wife. It serves no purpose to make her feel small, or to make her feel like you're from third world country and I'm from the United States of America. If I'm wise, I'm going to build her up as often I can so that she knows that her husband appreciates the smallest things she does, that he notices the smallest thing she does. She put up a new shower curtain liner the other day, and I told her I thought it looked nice, or she'll get some little holder for, I don't know, shampoo bottles or something, and I tell her, hey, that was really useful. We need that. Keeps them from falling over all the time. The more good words we say, we're really helping ourselves. We're really bringing health to ourselves when we use good words and try to build up our wife. Every woman wants to know if she is attractive to her husband, but they also want to know that she is attractive to him as a person. My wife knows I like how she looks, but I want her to know that the attractiveness of her character is never going to lose its appeal. I probably say 10 times as many things about her character than I do about her appearance. If she does a good thing for someone, even someone else, I compliment her on that. I stick up for her when I feel she needs it. I want her to expect that I notice the little things she does for me or anyone else, and I tell her that she did a good thing. In fact, I've learned to like doing this. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be, the better you'll be. There will be times I say something out of character, and I need to be sure that this is the exception and not the rule, because nobody's perfect. My wife should look forward to what I say, as I need to learn to make my words positive, strengthening, and uplifting. If I can do that, she is more likely to take the things I say seriously. Ephesians 4:25 says to put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor. In your anger, do not sin. Nowhere is God telling us to never be angry, because that's not possible. We are human. We're going to get angry, and sometimes we should. Remember, swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Sometimes the best thing to do would be to say to your wife that you are too upset to talk about it now, and you don't think now is the best time to talk about it. By the time the next day comes around, it's quite possible you will have calmed down, which will help to avoid saying damaging things. There is a verse in the Bible that says, let not the sun go down upon your wrath. That doesn't necessarily mean that the two of you have to reach some conclusion or answer to some issue before you fall asleep, although that would be great. But you should have the anger worked out of your system before the end of the day, and you may just have to say, "Hon, I'm upset. I don't want to say anything to offend you. We need to talk about this. I just choose not to do it, right now." Proverbs 6:16 and 17. Here are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. It says a lying tongue, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. This last part sounds like the Philippines vlogging scene, stirring up conflict in the community. Proverbs 6:16 and 17 knows about the Philippines vlogging community. Matthew 12:36 and 37 says, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. And again, in Jesus' 30-some years of life on earth, despite all the hate that he endured, he never spoke a single careless word. Talk about self-control. In marriage, there is no such thing as a careless word. Words do matter. Remember, people don't forget. There are or will be consequences, and they might be serious. It's just so dark in here. I can see myself in the camera. It's having trouble seeing what I want to say. There have been some times when I said something to my wife, then later thought about whether or not it might have bothered her or might have been taken the wrong way. Sometimes I tell her I apologize for something I said several hours ago and try to clarify what I meant so that there are no hard feelings. Proverbs 16:24, gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Wouldn't it be great if the Filipina in our life believed from experience that whenever we had something to say, it brought health? Honestly, learning how to communicate graciously before marrying a Filipina is excellent premarital education. If a man's words are consistently gracious and uplifting to his Filipina, she will probably look radiant. But if he is cutting her down, she will probably look old before her time. In fact, my wife is very pleasant to work with. We are employed at the same place. She is the kind of person you look forward to working with. She smiles. She's friendly. She avoids gossip and drama. And I often wonder, do you think she would come across this way if her home life were filled with nitpicking, complaining, and criticism? She wouldn't look like that. I'd like to think that whether people realize it or not, that the woman they're looking at work is feeling good about herself because she is being built up with gracious words from her husband. If that were not the case, her countenance, her appearance would be resoundingly different. I hope they look at her and say, well, her husband must be good to her because, this woman seems happy. Well, I'm glad the lighting is good. It's a lot darker in this basement living room than it looks like on camera. I guess that's the main thing. I'm worried that people, you know, can't see me very well. I know I'm busy though. Yeah, my mom's saying I had to move the car for Isa, but I have time. She won't be home for another half an hour or so. Now, just mention complaining here because those are also words that aren't good for a relationship, whether you're complaining about your wife or like I do sometimes. I end up complaining about stuff that is out of my control and probably doesn't even have to do with my wife, but it bothers her anyway. Complainer means one who is discontented with his lot in life. It is not a good idea to complain about your wife or even anything else because there just isn't any good that can come from that. Philippians 2:14 in fact tells us to do all things without grumbling or complaining. It is one thing to complain to God about a situation in our life, but we must learn not to complain about God. There were seemingly a million times I lamented to God about being alone before I got married, and I questioned why it was that way. Um, but I was aware I was not to let that deteriorate to the point of blaming God for the situation or assaulting his character, putting his love. Like Job, in all of his plight and suffering, he knew God had a reason, even if he wasn't revealing it. In fact, the Bible doesn't tell us whether God ever told Job why he put him through what he did. Unless you marry someone completely not right for you, you should think that God gave you the woman, that Filipina, to be your helper, and that is far beyond just, avoiding sexual sin by being able to have sex without guilt in marriage. Try not to complain about her. A wife that hears her husband complain is going to be an unhappy wife. She will tire of hearing her husband complain about anything if it is unremitting. And there have been times my wife had to tell me to stop complaining. And it's probably a good time to mention this, that in the Philippines, they grow up, what we would consider with more hardship. And, my wife comes here to America and I'm sure she's thinking, well, you guys complain about everything. You guys couldn't stand it where I'm from, and they don't. I've been there 3 times in the Philippines. We just went this year, probably go back next year. And you don't hear a lot of complaining. Despite some of the conditions, you don't hear a lot of complaining. So it's going to be a shock to her system, if she marries someone that is complaining. And I want to run through this here before we close. Instead of complaining, there's a place called savingadvice.com and johngordon.com that offer these helpful tips. Instead of complaining, be grateful. Be grateful that God gave her to you. Be grateful for all her good attributes, for the good times that you have shared. Also, take action. Instead of complaining, take steps to fix it. If it's a money issue, you might have to write the numbers, the figures on paper and show how practically a certain decision will affect the bottom line. It might be to get counseling in a situation. It might be to work together to put options down on paper, but take action. Also, to avoid complaining, let it go. Let it go. Sometimes it's better to lose a battle so you don't end up losing a war. A man who had been married for 63 years, this was at Branson when we went there, in the audience was asked what his secret of success was. And of course, there are no secrets, but his answer was, I've learned I would rather be happy than right. He's right on. I've learned I would rather be happy than right. You don't always have to be right, but you want to try to maintain peace in your relationship. This is where it helps to remind yourself that as the husband, you are the one who is to shape and give direction to the marriage, all the while doing so without trying to control your wife. If that happens and you aren't directing, leading, you would be controlling and bossing. There might even be times when you have to allow your wife to make a decision that you don't necessarily agree with, by carefully weighing the benefits and consequences. Please see the video I have about not controlling your wife. I won't go into detail, but there was a time early on for us that I did not agree with something that she wanted us to do, and I sought some advice, not on what to do because I didn't think I was going to change her mind, but on the best way to handle the situation. And the advice I got from a woman I trusted was to ask what she thought the best thing to do was, my wife, and if she was absolutely sure, then I would allow it. If it, didn't work out, we could manage the loss. But if it did work out, my wife would respect me for allowing her to move forward with something she knew wasn't my preference. But I wanted to defer to her as much as possible. If it did not work out, she would respect me for allowing her to do it. So that would end up being a win-win situation. Another thing to do to avoid or deal with complaining is to find a distraction. Get away, lift weights, read, walk, listen to music. Often as men, we want to fix things right now, and we will get extremely frustrated if we are not getting cooperation. Personally, I would choose to go for a walk, listen to some music so I could pray and think things over and walk off some tension. Also, prayer, when we want to really complain, pray. Remind yourself that God is in control, and there are times He will test us in our marriage. We ask God for wisdom and direction and to maintain love for our wife. Complaining cultivates a bad attitude and can affect and infect others. It means it is time for prayer to God. Being a complainer is not the impression you want to give off as a believer, because it looks like you don't believe God's promises or you think you know better than He does. Instead, Philippians 4 verse 6 tells us to not be anxious about anything, but to present our requests to God. In fact, 1 Peter 5:7 tells us to cast all our anxiety on God because He cares for us. Another thing to do would be to read the Bible. It may take the issue off of your mind for a while. It could also give you the particular wisdom that you are looking for. In the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13:4-8, there are statements like love suffers long. So that's going to be a normal situation. You're going to have long suffering. It's not easily provoked. You're going to get provoked. So you have to learn how to handle that provocation without damaging the relationship. Love believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Two people are always apt to disagree about things, and they need to be worked through together as much as possible. It's important for me as a husband to accept that I have done all I can. I am to hope and believe that God is able to resolve a situation that is causing much friction and complaining between us. I do everything I can. I just have to leave it in God's hands. And also focus on what's going right. If you are prone to perfectionism, this will be more of a challenge. It is likely there's a lot of good about your Filipina relationship, so it helps to think about that, to thank your Filipina for how good she has been to you. Praise. This is similar to focus on what's going right. Praise her for the things she still does that you generally appreciate, instead of complaining or thinking about the past. Try not to have tunnel vision on the particular matter at hand, because you might overlook the good that exists. Or when you're complaining, vent and be done with it. Just don't burn down the bridge while doing it. Focus on the issue and don't get personal with name calling and blaming. This will help the next time something comes up that you'd want to complain about, as you will have learned a little restraint, and your Filipina would realize that you avoided duking it out with her, figuratively speaking. Also, just let it go. After you've done the things I mentioned, you have little choice but to just let it go. Keep affirming your wife in other ways, and don't make your whole marriage or relationship about the thing that has been causing tension lately, resulting in complaining. 1 Peter 4:9 says, show hospitality to one another without grumbling. James 5:9, do not complain against one another. So it's just yeah, the Bible is aware we tend to complain. 1 Corinthians 10:10, and don't grumble as some of them did, and then were destroyed by the angel of death in the wilderness. And then lastly, I'll just mention here obscene talk. There's so much more we're not even going to touch on here about the importance of communication. But I hope that, this video, which should be, I don't know, it's a little over an hour now. Hopefully it'll be the shortest one I've had. Obscene talk is something else to be aware of. Colossians 3:8, but now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. A whole video could be made about these different aspects of communication. And another type would be obscene talk, or using profanity, or talking about obscene subjects. That tends to result in even more of a lack of control. And there are times, when I've peppered something I said with profanity, because I thought that was the only way they were going to really see how upset I was. But especially in light of everything I've just said, that's not the right approach. It'd be better to just walk away, or just calmly say what I need to say, come back later, get into it more calmly. But you can't have a relationship without speaking to each other. And it only makes sense to use our words wisely, use them for good, and not to tear down. This is how I need to communicate with my love beyond the sea. And we've been married for 3 years and 4 months. And I think we're learning to get over issues quicker. Neither one of us feels good, if we have to go to bed, a little bit angry with each other. Sometimes just holding each other at night. Like I said earlier, nonverbal communication, sometimes that will help. Other times you have to just express that you're sorry, you did wrong. You're sorry if you hurt them. You don't want to do that again. Yeah. Phil Stefanix, a pastor friend, says profanity is a weak mind trying to sound forceful. Well, it certainly isn't a strong mind. It certainly is a lack of self-control. Again, think before speaking. Using profanity, is that going to help? Is there a better way to say something? I have a good vocabulary. There must be dozens of other ways I could say things that would get the point across. That's fine. That's fine. I'll be up there. Okay, I'm busy right now. So my mom's going to try to make me lose my train of thought. Wants me to move my car. Isa's not going to be home yet, so I'll be out there for her. We live with our mom, or she lives with us, Filipino style. I have a video on that, something my wife wanted to do. So yeah, I wanted to talk about the profanity because it can be an easy substitute for wanting to talk things through calmly and rationally, and can make things worse. And a weak mind, sure. We're not supposed to. It's so common. My wife has noticed that, in this country. We just talked about it last night. She said, why are these words so common? Why do people use these words so readily in any situation? Maybe not in church, but about anywhere else. And, that's just the way we are here. It's just part of the culture, I guess you could say, is using profanity. And it's not something to use anywhere, especially in a relationship. And I was going to say something about this. Oh, yeah, somebody said the other day that they read where profanity, or using profanity, was actually a sign of intelligence. And I don't think they were kidding. I think they were serious. The person that said that was serious, and I don't agree with that. The Bible would just say, as I already said, the wise person uses restraint. The wise person thinks about what he's going to say before he says it. And the fool just gushes out evil. We've seen tonight, not the intelligent one, but the fool just says what's on their mind and just erupts, is not swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. So you're not going to impress her with your profanity. But that's just one thing that you can do that would hurt her. Again, saying things negatively, being overly critical, not being thankful. Those things are bad. So I need to get going here, but thanks. Appreciate Phyllis to Phoenix for you being here. And, um, I appreciate your comments. I know what it's like for you being married to a Filipina. I'm sure you know, as I do, it's one of the best things in the world. Um, Filipinas make great wives. My channel is to help people to pursue, to know how good uh, being married to a Filipina can be if you're about to give up in your own country, like I pretty much resigned myself to doing, and like many people are doing in the world today. Don't give up. Consider a woman in another country like the Philippines if you never have before, and it may open up wonderful opportunities for you to still, while you're relatively young enough, find love, find a good marriage. So thank you again, and I got to take care of the car, move that out of the way for my wife, coming home from a 12-hour day. So that's the topic for today. I hope you can maybe someday, if you're just catching this part of it, I hope somebody will just let this roll sometime like I do. I'll drive somewhere, sit around the house, and I'll just find a video and I'll just play it, even if it's an hour, just listen to it. So nevertheless, I hope you get something from whatever segment that you were able to listen to here about communication. Is absolutely positively essential. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how good you are in bed. If you can't communicate properly with your Filipina, it's not going to work. So until next time, this is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Thanks for watching.